Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, 6th Canto, Chapter 1, Text 61. Drishtva Tam Kama Liptena. Drishtva Tam Kama Liptena. Bahuna Parirambitam. Bahuna Parirambitam. Jagama Hrichchaya Vasham. Jagama Hrichchaya Vasham. Sahasaiva Vimohita. Sahasaiva Vimohita. Drishtva Tam Kamaliptena. Bahuna Parirambitam. Jagama Hrichchaya Vasham. Sahasaiva Vimohita. Drishtva Tam Kamaliptena. Bahuna Parirambitam. Jagama Hrichchaya Vasham. Sahasaiva Vimohita. Drishtva Tam Kamaliptena. Bahuna Parirambitam. Jagama Hrichchaya Vasham. Sahasaiva Vimohita. Please chant. Shishikontama Pishashikija. Drishtva, by seeing Tam, her, prostitute, Kamalipna, decorated with turmeric inside lusty desires. Bahuna, with the arm, Parirambitam, embraced. Jagama, went. Chaya, of lusty desires within the heart. Vasham, under the control. Sahasa, suddenly. Eva, indeed. Vimohita, being illusioned. Translation: the Shudra, his arm decorated with turmeric powder, was embracing the prostitute. When Ajamil saw her, the dormant lusty desires in his heart awakened, and in illusion he fell under their control. Please repeat. The Shudra, his arm decorated with turmeric powder, was embracing the prostitute. When Ajamil saw her, the dormant lusty desires in his heart awakened, and in illusion he fell under their control. Srila Prabhupada's purport said that if one's body is smeared with turmeric, it attracts the lusty desires of the opposite sex. The word Kamaliptena indicates that the Shudra was decorated with turmeric smeared on his body. Om Ganatamarandasya Gananjana Salakaya Chakshurmilitam Yana Tasma Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangam Lagate Grimya Kripa Tamam Vande Shri Grim Dinataranam Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Translation again. The Shudra, his arm decorated with turmeric powder, was embracing the prostitute. When Ajamil saw her, the dormant lusty desires in his heart awakened, and illusion he fell under their control. So there are some certain rules if one wants to remain celibate. There are certain rules that brahmachari should follow. In fact, there are some differences between brahmachari and grihastha, although Prabhupada required even his grihastha devotees to remain celibate. He called them grihastha brahmacharis. So this is, Prabhupada mentioned that ISKCON is movement of Paramahamsas, so he wasn't necessarily just trying to cultivate some ancient or revive the ancient Varnashram system in the sense that people could very gradually come to a certain point through elevation over lifetimes. Prabhupada was offering something much more, although later on he discussed lightly Varnashram, but he says that ISKCON is for the devotees and Varnashram is for everyone else. So the devotees who are coming, they've jumped on they're in the fast lane, going back to Godhead. And others, they're just wondering which bus to catch in the slow lane. So the Varnashram Dharma is there so that whatever situation you're in, that you can gradually make some advancement. But for the devotees, then they want to follow strictly. And to do that, we have to know, it's all very well knowing what we're supposed to do, but how are we going to manage it? So there's certain rules and regulations or tips, guidelines which help to keep devotees safe. So, for example, so I lose my my voice with pollen with the hyacinths, but thanks. So, for example, the brahmachari is not supposed to hear the singing of a woman, right? So we think, well, Mother Vrinda's singing in the kirtan, the brahmachari should just leave the temple, right? What do you think? Should we do that? Huh? There weren't many people in the first place. So what do you think? Should we do that? If Mother Vrinda's singing or any of the other ladies are singing, all the men should leave the temple. Why would we not do that? Anybody? Yeah, because she's a devotee. We're not seeing her as a female. We're not seeing the ladies as, it's different if you're listening to some like female pop star jumping about and singing, but if you're listening to a devotee singing kirtan, that's a different thing. So we don't see like that. We see the devotee. A devotee sees other devotees in the terms of their devotional service, their surrender. We don't see them as the body. To see, that's mentioned in Nectar of Instruction, to see the devotee as having some infirmity or something like that, or judging them based on their body, basically, then it's not the right way to see a devotee. So when we hear a devotee singing, then, but normally, brahmacharis wouldn't listen to kind of sense gratificationary music anyway, but certainly other things they say is like one shouldn't even touch the wooden form of a woman. Like sometimes they make some wooden model for decorating or for making dresses or whatever. So one should avoid to see these things. What other prohibitions are there in the brahmachari ashram? You must know because you're in it. Is that a secret? Don't want to say. Yeah. To avoid eating too much foods in the mode of passion, things like that. Now the thing is, it's not necessary. And some people actually, because they're fighting with their own desires, and then they may find themselves attracted to think like that source of attraction is bad, but actually it's the thing which is in us, it's the lust which has to be purified. That lust is simply perverted love of God. So it's not that because we feel attracted to something because of hardly any clothes on and they're bad. It's a desire within us that has to be purified. But still, even if one is trying to follow the rules and regulations to keep oneself safe, because the senses have to be controlled, and to restrict the senses from the sense objects is one part of it. That's the mechanical part of it. But the mind is the center of the senses. The mind is the sixth sense. So the mind comes up with ideas, generates ideas how we can engage the senses for enjoyment. If the mind is our enemy, then it brings us reaction. But if the mind is our friend, it will come up with ideas how we can engage the senses in Krishna's service. So while we're in the process of becoming purified, sometimes it's a bit of a struggle because we want to enjoy, but we're forced our mind and senses to do something for Krishna. Normally we're used to, as Prabhupada calls it, the work reward system, where we, whatever we do or whatever we say, we expect a certain result back from it. But the art of devotional service is doing something for the pleasure of Guru and Krishna without expecting something back. And this is the natural position of the living entity. But because we have become the enjoyer and the controller, then naturally, or material second nature, we expect some return back for it. So engaging the mind and by utilizing the intelligence, or by following the Shastra. The Shastra is intelligence. It's saying, don't do this, don't do that, do this, do that. And typically in Kali Yuga, people are quite rebellious. As soon as you say don't, they say, well, why not? Who are you to tell me what to do? We don't want to hear being told something right. You're just another person with an opinion. What's the value of your opinion more than mine? And Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita says at the very end, it says, everything that I've said to you, that is my opinion. Deliberate on it as you will. So, but if we want to get the results which Krishna is offering, then we follow Krishna's opinion above our own opinion. The problem is sometimes we're so attached to our own opinion that we just can't see what's beyond that. So that keeps us very limited concept of life, because our opinions are very deeply ingrained. I remember when I was younger, actually, I was thinking I didn't really have a point of view. I didn't seem to have an opinion, and I was thinking I was missing something. And later on, I developed some opinions and some points of view, but then I realised they were actually just something that I'd adopted. It was becoming a conditioning. So if we have to accept an opinion, accept the opinion of Krishna. So just like in the 9th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Patram Pushpam Palam Toyam Yomi Bhakti Prayachati Tadapam Bhakti Paratam Ajnami Prayatatmanha. If one offers me with love and devotion a leaf, fruit, flower, or water, I will accept it. So therefore, Krishna says, if you offer this foodstuffs, everybody has to eat. But if we offer these foodstuffs, these are acceptable, not other things, not meat, not fish, not eggs, not abominable things, not things which require, which are not offerable. And so if we offer these things, because it's not enough simply to be vegetarian, we have to offer everything to Krishna, otherwise karma bandhana, bondage to karma. There's some reaction, because even the plants, etc., they're also living entities. How do they grow? What's the symptom of life? The 6 symptoms. Can anyone name any one or all of them? Ashish?
Growth, then stability, and then dwindling, old age, and then death.
Yeah. So they're doing things as producing some offspring.
Yeah, sorry, reproduction.
They're certainly doing things. Yeah. So that's the 6 symptoms of living entities, and that you can see in the different species. As first of all, there's birth, right, coming into being. They manifest somehow or another, and then they grow. It's not like things just appear full size unless you're a demigod. Apparently, they appear just fully grown. So birth, growth, maintaining for some time. At a certain point in time, growth stops. It's not that we just keep growing, for 75 years and then we're like as tall as a building. And then we produce some offspring, and then we dwindle. In other words, old age comes, and then finally we disappear or die. So these are the 6 symptoms there of the living entity in the material bodies. And I forgot where I was going with that there. So anyway, these symptoms are there. Oh yeah. So that is there also in the plants, which means there's consciousness there. What is the soul? People think that sometimes the soul is only in the human form of life. And in fact, they used to think that black people didn't have a soul. And they used to also say that sometimes people didn't have a soul until they were 21 years old, and they were white Anglo-Saxon Protestants. So they were kind of limiting it down. But the thing is, all they've done with that is display their ignorance, that they don't know what the soul is. And when I was young, I was asking, I was brought up in a faith which was told that you have a soul. And I was thinking, okay, so I have a soul, so where is it? And nobody knows, it's invisible. Okay, but what is it? And nobody could say anything about it. So you got something that nobody knows anything about, but it's extremely sacred, and you got to protect it by certain kind of do's and don'ts. So it could lead to people just thinking, well, this is just imaginary. There's no proof, there's no understanding. We just have to kind of believe it. But I believed in Santa Claus when I was young, but I realized he wasn't real. So perhaps this is just another Santa Claus. But then when I read Prabhupada's books, he says, you are the soul and you have a body. That is the difference. We're not the body with a soul. So this promoting the bodily conception is not a religious principle. Promoting the spiritual conception is a spiritual principle. So Krishna says, offer me with love and devotion the fruit, flower, and water. And that means these foods, I know that you have to eat. So then these are foodstuffs which I will sanction you can eat. You offer it to me and there's no sinful reaction involved. So that means it's not enough just to eat those foods. You have to offer them to Krishna. Otherwise, he would have said, just eat this. But he says, offer me these things. So when we offer it to Krishna, see, everything is Krishna's separated energies. We have Krishna has multifarious energies. But if we offer something which appears to be a material energy, we offer it to Krishna, he accepts it by his glance. And by following the procedure that the spiritual master says, okay, this is how you make an offering, then that food then becomes Krishnaized, it becomes spiritual, and it purifies us. Not only is there no reaction from it, but it purifies us from past reactions. And sometimes people have seen this, the effects, wonderful effects of prasadam, such as we experience every day. But even on occasions, I've given the example a few times, but just for those who haven't heard it, when the Krishna consciousness movement was trying to gain a foothold in South Africa, this was in, they tried to establish International Society for Krishna Consciousness as a legal entity, as a bona fide religion, charity, etc. And they were speaking with government officials, and at that time apartheid was still in place, where the whites, the browns and the blacks all lived separately. They weren't allowed to share and stuff like that. So anyway, because ISKCON is a real kind of melting pot of all sorts of castes, colours, creeds, etc., then we're insisting, no, it must be the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, and they're saying, no, it must be the South African Society for Krishna Consciousness. So this reasoning and arguing was going on back and forward for some time. Then a devotee brought in, I can't remember, it was either some samosas or Simply Wonderfuls, it was some prasadam anyway, and then they passed it around, and as soon as the government people started to take prasadam, then they just changed their mind and says, okay, why not? International Society for Krishna Consciousness. And the devotees had to hold back their laughing because they knew what had happened. It was Krishna in the form of prasadam had softened their mind. And yeah, we sometimes have seen that. One time I was distributing books in Cambridge, and I had a big metal plate, you know, like some of these metal plates that devotees eat from, looks like a dustbin lid, and it was full of Mahaprasadam from Radha Gokulananda. And as I was giving out each book, I was giving out a sweet, and the people were just coming back, can I get another book? And they didn't, they just wanted another sweet. And I said, okay, did I get a sweet with it? And within no time, all my books and all the sweets had gone. I was thinking, well, this is the way to distribute books. Prasadam, people just, you could see it in the people's faces, they were just ecstatic. They just, they didn't know what was happening, but they just wanted to come back and get more of it. And that's the nature of Krishna consciousness, that no matter how much we get, we're never satisfied, but at the same time we're content. Because this is anandam buddhivardhanam, the ever-increasing ocean of transcendental bliss. Whereas in the material world, the more we try to enjoy something, the more that pleasure decreases. So just like here, we're seeing this, Ajamil witnessed the Sudra and the prostitute enjoying together. And just like in the animal kingdom, sometimes you see, usually in the bird species, the male is the more decorated one, isn't it? And they do a dance, and they, fan out their feathers, and they may do a mating call, and then the female notices, and then they pounce on them, and then they do their business. And a couple of seconds later, then it's all over. So the different mating rituals are there. And trying to, and this goes on in the human platform as well. People are dressing up to attract someone for the purpose of enjoying. So here we're saying that this Sudra had decorated his arms with turmeric powder. So who knew that? Anybody that's looking for a girlfriend or a boyfriend or whatever friend you're looking for, you ever tried putting turmeric on yourself? Go down to the nightclubs covered in turmeric, right? Someone calls an ambulance, somebody's got jaundice here. Actually, I seen once, it was one devotee who was very much into the rules and regulations and fire yajnas, and he knew like hundreds of mantras and all the mudras that you do for offering, etc. And he got married, and it was actually just before the marriage, just like what you would call the stag night, and he was totally yellow. I says, "Oh, what's wrong with you? You look sick. You won't be getting married tomorrow." says, no, it's a Vedic ritual. He took it a bit far. I'd never seen anyone else try that before. But this is a natural thing which is meant for attracting the opposite sex. So when Ajamil saw this situation, then the lusty desires within his heart awakened, and in illusion he fell under their control. So he fell under the control of his lusty desires. And Krishna speaks about this in Bhagavad Gita, that even any one of the senses which focus on the sense objects can lead away a devotee even of good intelligence. So here we see the example here. Ajamil, his eyes, he's seen a couple enjoying, and then his desires arose, and he didn't counteract it. He gave in to that. It says that he fell under the control. So just like I think it was yesterday, we were discussing, well, what chance have we got? We're seeing this all the time. It's a daily affair. If you walk into, you can't even turn on your phone or your laptop or go to the shops, but you might find something which would attract your senses. So therefore this Maha Mantra, this the great deliverer of the mind, is the means for counteracting the ill effects of Kali Yuga, where at any moment there's padam, yadvi padam. So pada means feet, padam, yadvi padam means step after step there's danger in this material world. Even physically there's danger in this material world. We think, even with all the health and safety is basically just the school of hard knocks, that somebody had an accident, then they decided, okay, we need to put something to prevent that happening, then another accident, and then another accident. And then what happens is you end up with a whole load of rules and precautions to try to keep people safe, which is a good thing. But ultimately, this material body is very fragile. You have one trip, you trip over your own feet. Sometimes we're so clumsy, right? We just trip over ourselves, or we don't notice something, we trip over it, and then you have a fall, and then you're stuck with something that's never the same again. Especially for old people, if they fall and break their bones, then it could be the end of them. They end up, it doesn't heal for ages, and so many other complications come from that. So the material body is very fragile. I remember one devotee tell me that his uncle had caught somebody attacking his wife, and so he punched this guy once, and he fell over and he cracked his head on the curb and died, and he went to jail for murder. So we just see a simple thing like that. It says how dangerous it is. But actually even more dangerous than just the physical body, like perhaps they have, like at the temple, we have a few houses you rent out to try to maintain the temple and the mission here in Scotland. And every year you have to get a gas safety certificate, and every so many years you have to get electrical safety certificate. Because even it might be safe just now, and it appears that nothing's changing, but strangely enough, things become faulty, things become dangerous. Even if you get a car, like you have an MOT, which is a roadworthy test, it might get MOT'd today, and you think that's great, my car's fine for another year. But something can go wrong that it actually becomes a danger tomorrow. They're only testing what they see then and there at that point in time. But more dangerous than the dangers of the physical body, padam yadvi padam, is the dangers for the spirit soul. So therefore we should be even more careful. We take so much care that we don't slip, we don't trip, we don't get electrocuted, we don't handle live wires with wet hands, things like that. We don't handle live wires at all if we can avoid it. If you smell gas, immediately get everybody out of the building. Don't switch on any lights, don't switch off any lights, don't touch anything, just get out, open all the doors and windows, call the plumber or the fire. As soon as there's any kind of risk of danger, then we try to protect the body. But we should be even more vigilant to protect the self, because this body it's a wonderful facility for us to engage in devotional service, and we have to keep on focusing on what we're doing, why we're doing it. If we forget the purpose why we're doing it, then it becomes mundane, And then we think, oh, there's not much reward for doing this. Let me go outside where I can get more reward. We fall back into that karmic cycle again. And so the idea is to learn either how we can utilize whatever we know in Krishna's service, or to do anything and everything in Krishna's service. Sometimes the devotees, it's quite often in ISKCON you'll find yourself either jumping in the deep end or getting thrown in the deep end, where you learn new and wonderful skills. And there's so many talented devotees that even if you find yourself in a position where you've been asked to do something and you haven't got a clue what to do, you can ask someone. And ultimately you can ask Krishna, depend on Krishna. And the safety net is that Krishna says, in this endeavor there's no loss or diminution. So even if materially it doesn't turn out perfect, because we try to do it to please Krishna, to please spiritual master, to please the representatives of Krishna, then it's perfect. And that perfection is connected with Krishna. So material, he said, Krishna said, it's better to do one's own duty imperfectly than another's duty perfectly. So say, for example, so say, for example, somebody asks you to do something and you think, well, I could do something else better. But then you get someone else has been asked to do that. Then it's better that we can offer it, could say, well, could we swap duties? I could maybe do that better. But ultimately, there may be another reason why we're asked to do something, which is for our spiritual welfare. And Srila Prabhupada, he would drop the devotees in the deep end big time. One time they were on a train journey in India, and Prabhupada was with some disciples, and they were going on, typically in India you have very long train journeys. To have like 10, 14 hour, 20 odd hour train journeys is nothing unheard of. And if you've got enough money, then you get a sleeper. Otherwise, you have to be prepared for some austerities and tie up your luggage. At some of the railway stations they sell padlocks and chains so you can tie up all your baggage. And you have to be careful of people who are too friendly, who offer you food. You might fall asleep, wake up and see that there's no luggage there. Anyway, that's just the effects of desperation. But so this train journey that Prabhupada and his disciples were on, they stopped at one station, and Prabhupada said to one of his disciples, okay, now you get off here and open a center. And then they get off, and then that was it. He was left there, and he was depending on Krishna. And the devotees would say, oh, what to do? And Prabhupada said, just depend on Krishna. Krishna will supply everything. And Prabhupada had that faith, and because devotees were associating with Prabhupada, he would emanate that that confidence, that faith. And if you read Shyamasundar Prabhu's book, the Prabhupada disciple Shyamasundar, called Chasing Rhinos with the Swami, it's 3 volumes. The 3rd volume is actually going to include Prabhupada's visit to Scotland, so we're eager to see that. So if you read that, you'll see many occasions where the devotees, it was normal for them just to expect, what amazing thing is the Swami going to ask us to do next? We'll just have to depend on Krishna. They were looking forward to it, because there's one occasion where they couldn't. It was the first temple, 26 2nd Avenue, I think it was. I think it was that temple. That they couldn't. They practically had no money, and they were just wondering how could they pay the rent. And the devotees were in anxiety, and Prabhupada was just saying, "Don't worry, it will come." And so the devotees, I can't remember what they were doing. They were on the way somewhere, and then just all this money started just blowing down the street, and they were just gathering it, and then took it to Prabhupada. So things like this would happen. So, of course, there's a contrast between depending on Krishna, because Krishna is Kartam Isha, he's the actual only doer. And then we think we are the doer, so we think that things are limited according to what I can offer. Now, of course, there has to be some intelligence involved in this, because if we don't really have that faith, then we can just create disaster. Or let's just go and sign to get a multi-floor block of flats in Glasgow, and we'll open a temple, and Krishna will send 500 devotees along, and we go and sign a lease, then we bankrupt ourselves. So we have to be a bit intelligence as well. If we don't have that faith, then we have to act on the level of faith which we do have. But at the same time, if someone who has a higher level of faith says, just go and do this, then we take that as confidence that, okay, Krishna's going to be involved in this somehow. And guaranteed that when you stay on the path of Krishna consciousness, you'll look back and you'll see that so many things you didn't think you could do, Krishna's put you in that situation where you were able to do so many things you hadn't planned to do. It's like Kadamba Kanna Maharaj once said, he was asked, have you ever seen God? And he says, well, I've seen the hand of God. And usually that's in retrospect. When you look back, you think, well, I was trying for this and it was frustrating me and I had to go this way. And that's because this is what Krishna's plan was. So we try to be flexible in the hands of Krishna, try to be a via media of Krishna. And this way, even if our senses are attracted by something, if we just divert them back to Krishna, because he's pavitram, he's pure, then our mind will get purified very quickly. Even if the mind dwells on some sense object, just take it back and dwell on Krishna, and now you'll be uplifted again. So, Srila Prabhupada mentions in the Bhagavad Gita that the senses which are engaged in Krishna's service are no more dangerous than a serpent with broken fangs. You'll see, you take a dangerous snake, as long as it's not some kind of boa constrictor, and you take its teeth out, then you're not afraid of it any longer. What's it going to do? It's just going to give you a bit of a suck. It's trying to do something. It's not, can't even damage you. So the senses, they're very dangerous when they're not engaged in Krishna's service. But if we engage them in Krishna's service, first of all, physically we have to engage our senses. But then the other thing is to convince our mind and to engage our mind in thinking of the reason why we're doing this, what we're doing, and to be open to do any service for Krishna. Prabhupada says that there's certain things we like to do and certain things we might not like to do. So that's one level of devotion and service. But he said that the perfection is to be equally enthusiastic about any type of service we're asked to do, because it's devotional service. So in that way, we value ourselves as a devotee and ready to do anything in the service of the Lord. Just like sometimes you'll see some of our devotees on the altar as a Brahmin. You can't go onto the altar and touch the deity, offer food to the deities, art, etc., unless you're second initiated. And that takes some time and dedication and commitment. And the caste system, then generally the Brahmins, they do all these things. It's called suchi. Suchi means clean. They do all the clean activities. So if you ever get to the opportunity, or for those who are in that situation and those who are not, then there are certain standards you have to abide by when working in the deity department, such as, say, you're cooking, right? And even if you go like that, you've got to go wash your hand. Or if you go like that, wash your hand. Something drops on the floor, you have to wash it before you put it anywhere. So very clean standards. It's called suchi. Same with the deities. You don't like scratch your head or something and then go and carry on with the deities. You have to purify your hand with the Ganga Jal, the Ganges water. So like that, but still at the same time, in the caste system, then generally people who are doing these suchi or clean activities, they never do anything which is in another kind of caste. But the Vaishnava means devotee of Vishnu. They do anything. So the same person you might see later on in the day cleaning the toilets, they're not thinking, oh, this is dirty. I don't do that. I'm a Brahmin. They don't restrict their service to Krishna. And this is very good because it means that everybody can appreciate everybody's service. It's not like they think, well, you're just a toilet cleaner. I'm the Brahmin. This kind of thing we don't encourage. What we do encourage is that everybody appreciates, okay, you don't like the toilet cleaner. Nobody cleans the toilets. So how are you going to get clean? If you go into the bathroom and it's filthy, nobody cleans it. So we all do cleaning duties. Prabhupada says a Brahmin, if he goes into a bathroom or a place, a toilet, he leaves it cleaner than he finds it. It's just he can't settle in a situation which is not clean. Of course, this is quite difficult in Kali Yuga. But internal cleanliness is something which also, as soon as there's some impurity, we see something and incite some desire. Now, lusty desire, we're talking about lusty desire here in terms of sexual attraction, but lusty desire means any kind of desire to enjoy the material world. It could mean having a cottage by the lake and something like that, and just living on our own, or just doing something which is separate from Krishna's service. Basically, that's what it means. But when you engage all these other things in Krishna's service, even procreation, that produces devotees. So everything then is devotional service. So, and Prabhupada says, if you like to eat nice foodstuffs, then just offer it to Krishna. If you want to have children, then do it in Krishna consciousness. And if you want to make a lot of money, then make it and engage it in Krishna's service. Or if you have skill, some skill, then use it in Krishna's service. But ultimately, everything we do, we try to analyze, am I doing this for me? Am I doing it for Krishna? And the thing which brings it all into focus is the chanting of the Mahamantra. So Prabhupada encourages to try to come to the point where we can chant minimum 16 rounds a day on the beads and unlimited off the beads. So this is corroborated by Krishna in Bhagavad Gita, where he says, Satatam kirtayantu mam, always chant my name. So Satatam, Sat means eternal. So that means even in your sleep. Has anybody ever found themselves chanting in their sleep? And nobody? Sure. Probably you just forgot your dreams. Yeah, sometimes you're on book distribution. I remember one time we were traveling in the motorhome, and there's one devotee used to talk in his sleep. And you'd hear him like he was on Sankirtan in his sleep. He'd be like, "Excuse me, take a book." Yeah, good idea. And there's another one, Ashutosh. He wouldn't just talk in his sleep. He'd be lying down and he'd sit bolt upright in his bed, and he'd be like hitting people up, and then he'd go back to sleep again. You get woken up by somebody, you'd think, that they'd woken up. So this is the nature of devotional service. When we get intensely involved, and even in our sleep, we can be in devotional service. So that means, generally, Prabhupada said that sleep is like death to a devotee because it creates forgetfulness of Krishna. But if in our wakeful state, we're so engaging the mind and senses in Krishna's service, remembering Krishna, trying to hear about Krishna, understand the philosophy, and refraining from getting caught up in the distractions of Maya, then even in our sleep. Interesting story, I'll just leave you this one is, so Prabhupada had initiated some sannyasi devotees. And the sannyasi is like brahmachari to the brahmachari. He's generally they're very austere, renounced, intelligent devotees, and they very much restrict their association with materialistic persons, with the opposite sex, etc. So he just initiated them, and Prabhupada was in his room, and one of his female disciples came through, young, very pretty, and Prabhupada says to the sannyasis, he said, "She's a pretty young lady, isn't she?" And the sannyasis were like, "What are we supposed to say here? If we say no, then we're disagreeing with Prabhupada. If we say yes, then we're not very good sannyasis. What do we say?" So Prabhupada's mentioned it a couple of times, and you could, obviously they didn't know what to say. He says, "Yes, but Krishna consciousness means we do nothing about it." So even the senses are attracted. Don't crucify yourself for it. That's natural. The senses and the sense objects are naturally attracted. But we do nothing about it. That's Krishna consciousness. We take our mind, wherever the mind wanders, we bring it back. And so we bring it back to focus on what we're doing, or we chant Hare Krishna, or we do both. And if we're struggling with the mind, we approach another devotee and say, "Oh, Prabhu, my mind's giving me a kick in at the moment. My mind's getting the better of me." As I went back to lead him, and I says, "Oh, my mind's giving me trouble." He says, "Well, just use your intelligence to control the mind." I was so bewildered. I said, "I don't have any intelligence." He says, "Well, use someone else's." So using someone else's means we went and asked someone, and I said, "Okay, so what do I do then? You're more intelligent than me." And he told me what to do. And then the intelligence is also, it's Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. That's our intelligence. And then in due course of time, our mind becomes our friend, and then we can also return that service to others who are new to Krishna consciousness. So this is called parampara, the Guru parampara. Prabhupada says, whatever you learn in Krishna consciousness, just give it to others. So it's not that we have to become completely perfect before we can share that with other people. We all have something to share. So any questions or comments?
Thank you for the class, bro. Oh, if you can kindly help explain what is the difference between a brahmachari and a sannyasi?
I've heard a few things being said. One is, I don't know if it's Shastric, but it was certainly an ISKCON spiritual master who said that. He says that sannyasi never thinks of women, whereas a brahmachari. So that's one way. So the brahmachari, the difference also between a brahmachari and a sannyasi is that brahmachari is a celibate student, and they have the freedom. At some point, they come to some crossroads, and just like from time to time, we ask our brahmacharis, so do you like to remain in the brahmachari ashram, or would you like to become grihasta? And often are you quite happy in the ashram? And quite often the reply is, never been happier. So this is the same for all the devotees in Krishna consciousness. You know, it's not like the brahmacharis or something and then the women are bad or something like that. All the devotees in ISKCON, whether they're male or female, they have to follow these vows which they took. Whether they're heterosexual, homosexual, whatever, if they want to be a devotee, they still have to follow the 4 regs, chant the 16 rounds. It's a spiritual vow which we take. So in one sense, Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, Grihi Tako Bani Tako Na Take Janjal, that whether you're grihasta in household life or a sannyasi living in the forest, it doesn't matter. Just take shelter of the holy name. In the brahmachari ashram, you have the choice that if you then decide, okay, I've been a brahmachari for some time, I think I'd now like to get married, then you can do that. But as a sannyasi, then that means no going back. No going back in the sense that you don't leave that ashram. Now you're just decided you're celibate for the rest of your life, completely dedicated. Tridandi sannyasi means 3 things: surrendered. Yeah. So words, mind and body, that all their words are in the service of the Lord, their body is used in the service of the Lord, and their mind is. So in this way we can see that anybody who is doing this is a sannyasi. They may not be dressed like one, but those who are dressed and who have taken the vows of sannyasi means that basically they are a mendicant, and generally these mendicants, they don't accumulate wealth, they don't remain in one fixed abode. Although in ISKCON sometimes that happens because of the type of renunciation which is called yukta vairagya, we can utilize in Krishna's service, then that can still be there. Just like the story we give of Prabhupada. Once again, he'd initiated 2 sannyasis. He told one, okay, now you go and travel everywhere and preach and don't stay in one place too long. He left the room and he told the other one, now you stay here for the rest of your life. So the main thing is to be renounced from the results of our activities. And which means we don't see that what we're doing is for us. It's Krishna's, everything's Krishna's property. We utilize everything Krishna's service. Just like you may be handling the accounts for some big multi-billion pound organisation, and you can be making transfers of millions of pounds here and there, and you're not seeing it as yours. As soon as you take some out of yours, then you're in trouble. So this is Krishna consciousness also. We don't see it as ours, we see it in Krishna's service, and we utilize things in order to do our service and for the mission, to further the mission. And would you like to add anything to that? Difference between sannyasi and brahmachari? Okay. But even in ISKCON, sometimes it's been the case, even in Prabhupada's time, when some sannyasis, because we're very young and they're coming from Western background, they didn't necessarily have the same culture, but they found it difficult to maintain. And then Prabhupada says, "Don't worry, just whatever ashram you're in, just carry on in Krishna consciousness. That's the main thing." So we can see that engagement in Krishna consciousness, whatever ashram is going to situate you properly, then that's the main thing. So like they say, even if you fall off the horse, you just get back on again and carry on the race. Yes.
Thank you. Just in terms of, you find, like, talk about an ashram that's, situating you properly. Is there also an element of the ashram having to challenge you and push you as well in Krishna consciousness? Because if you can get, maybe your nature's one, maybe you could just be comfortable being in a different ashram.
So are you asking that there should be some challenge there? It shouldn't just be finding a comfortable situation in the ashram, whatever the ashram is?
Yeah.
Yeah, there has to be. So as long as we're connected with the Krishna consciousness movement, so movement means movement, not that we're just getting comfortable and then, okay, now I'm in the brahmachari ashram, that's fine, I don't have to get a job. I'll just make sure I've got a nice mattress and a nice sleeping bag. And as long as I get my favourite toothpaste and soap, then that's fine. So they say that even a sannyasi, typically a sannyasi, all they own is a danda, a stick, and a water pot. But they said even a sannyasi can be attached to his own water pot. Sometimes they take a bath, they come back and see somebody's taken theirs. They're like, "Wow, you've got my water pot, yeah, I've got yours, I don't like yours, mine's is better." So all their attachment gets focused on that one thing. And that can happen even in the ashram if we're not careful, if we try to get too comfortable. The material world, if you get comfortable, the dust will settle on you and you become covered again. Just like the temple room, we clean it every day. It may seem like, what's the need to clean it? It looks clean already. But we clean it every day. If you don't clean it for a few days, the dust will be there. You pay your obeisances, it's all gritty. So that's the nature of the material world. That we have to keep on moving in Krishna consciousness. We have to be going forward, regardless of what ashram I'm in. Now, finding the suitable ashram means that if you're in one ashram but your mind is always disturbed and you can't peacefully practice Krishna consciousness, then you have to find the ashram which is suitable. So like some people might not be suitable for the brahmachari, grihastha, vanaprastha or sannyas. They may be suitable in something else. Vanaprastha is a kind of transitional ashram in one sense. There's different levels of it. And each ashram, there's also 4 levels of them to enable one to gradually become more detached. But yeah, we have to be careful. Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, give up all self-comforting. So we have to analyze, am I just making it a comfortable life for myself? On the other hand, we don't go out of our way to make things uncomfortable. It's not like, well, let me sleep on a bed of nails. And then you think, well, I couldn't sleep a wink last night. That bed of nails was so uncomfortable. I can't do any service today. Of course, I'm exaggerating, but sometimes if we take on some austerities like, well, I'm fasting today, I can't do any service, then don't fast, do the service. That's more important. If something gets, we have to, the basic principle, Rupa Goswami says is accept everything which is favourable for devotional service and reject that which is favourable. So if someone is in the Grihastha ashram, but they just can't settle in it, it's not right for them, then they may have to find the other ashram. But they also will have to be very careful because it involves other people there. Nowadays, ISKCON doesn't allow devotees to take sannyas just because they find it troublesome in the Grihastha ashram. This is called renunciation in the mode of passion, isn't it? Give up something because it's troublesome. Nowadays, you have to get permission from your wife and your kids that you're not going to leave them destitute. You've got to do it responsibly. So this is very good. So it's the individual's personal responsibility, not just to look for a comfort life. And at the same time, we're not going out of our way to look for difficulties. Like some devotees were taking on some unnecessary austerities. And Prabhupada says, well, if you like austerities, why don't you just put glass in your shoe? If you want some austerities. So he says, preaching means austerity. So that means sometimes when we're preaching directly or we engage in the preaching mission, we have to remember whatever we're doing, whether it's cleaning the floor, cooking prasadam, fixing something, emptying the bins, whatever it happens to be, or if you're out on Harinam or big distribution, it's all related to the preaching mission, the movement. So as long as we're part of that movement, if we stop doing Harinam, we stop doing books, we stop distributing prasadam, we just do it for ourselves, then we become interested in our own self-comforts. And Hari Sori Prabhu, who was Prabhupada's personal servant, he used to visit here and he told me that the communities which he's seen didn't make it with the ones that don't preach. They just become absorbed in their own maintenance. He says then inevitably they just end up becoming envious of each other, or they start fighting with each other, quarrelling. He says, but the ones who are doing preaching, then that maintains the preaching spirit. And then they're the successful ones. So this is the thing, we should always maintain a preaching spirit. So preaching means, of course, that we're taking Krishna consciousness to other people. We know we've benefited and we know they will also benefit because they're no different from us. They've just been trying to enjoy in the same way we did, and we found something which is superior enjoyment. It's interesting how people try so many things, but we say, well, why don't you just try this? Oh no, I've still got some other things to try first. Maybe when I'm burnt out. But why leave it till you're burnt out? Why not engage when we're in good condition? Yeah, so therefore, sometimes in the endeavours to preach, then there's not much austerity. We think, well, this is not austere. We're chanting Hare Krishna on the street. It's great. People are loving it. And then we have a prasadam afterwards, and then everyone's very happy. But other times you go out and somebody might harass you on Harinam, or some other rains going on, or you get an upset stomach, or the prasadam had too much salt in it and you didn't realise until you got out there and your flask is all you've got. These things happen, but the show must go on, isn't it? So whether there's happiness or distress, we carry on. This is what it means to tolerate tamsta tiksha bharata. But to be part of the movement means that we're trying to expand Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan mission, as long as we're part of that. Devotees sometimes would complain, I'll just finish with this, devotees would sometimes complain to Prabhupada, oh Prabhupada, you're pushing us so much. He said, I'm not pushing, I'm also being pushed. His spiritual master is pushing him, and his spiritual master, and ultimately Krishna is pushing. So if someone's pushing us, don't just turn around and curse the devotee that just told you to do that. Just think, Krishna is giving me a chance to go a bit further. Of course, we have to temper that with some kind of balanced outlook as well. Not that we unnecessarily stayed up late last night and then we do nothing the next day. So we look at it in the long term as, how am I going to practice devotional service for the rest of my life? Maintain this body, maintain a somewhat reasonable state of mind so we can do our service. So it's to accept that which is favourable for devotional service or reject that which is unfavourable. If being too comfortable means that we become dull-headed and we become disinterested and lazy, then that's to be rejected, isn't it? So you can try a bit of trial and error on your own personal journey, and you can also speak with others and see, particularly if you get any particular things you're thinking might be traps, either in the name of self-comforting or unnecessary austerities. Okay. ISKCON Guruvinda ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Nitai Gaur Premanande. Gaur